Sorry it's loud, you guys. I'm soldering, so I have all of my fans on. For the fumes, and I'm wearing a respirator, so it's hard to talk loud enough. Getting it centered. It's gotta be perfect. Gotta be perfect. I think it's good there. Now I'm going to heat it to set it in place. Just going to heat it a little bit. That'll dry the flux and kind of glue it into place. So I'm going to sweat solder the bezel onto the bird. And I don't want the solder to flow into the groove, so now we're going to use Stop Flow from Rio Grande. And this I'm going to paint on around the bezel so that when we solder it, the solder won't flow into all the grooves. This is the final piece here. So we're soldering this on, but I don't want the solder to flow into all these grooves. I'm sorry it's so loud, but I need to have my fans on to take away all the fumes while I solder. So this Stop Flow, we're going to paint all around it, and that's going to prevent the solder from going into the grooves. Some people use whiteout, but don't use whiteout. Whiteout is super toxic. This is a little less toxic, so this is better to use. So it's like I call it a no-flow solution, but it's called Stop Flow. I call it no flow. So I shook up the can, and now we have some on the lid, and I'm just going to paint it right onto the piece. You can see it bubble a little bit because I have the piece hot right now. So I got to make sure I'm getting the Stop Flow right into the grooves. So making sure I paint enough. You can see it bubbling a little bit just because the piece is still hot, so that's okay. I have my fan. I'm going to pull it a little closer just so the fumes are going away from my face, and I'm wearing a respirator, you guys, so it's hard for me to talk loudly enough for you guys to hear me, but I hope you can hear me enough. Soldering is really toxic, so I keep a couple air purifiers running, which are pretty loud, And then I use a fume extractor, which is right over here. So it's pulling the fumes away from my face. You always want to wear a good gas respirator when you do this. Very toxic. Ideally you have a window and really good ventilation. You can see it's not bubbling anymore, so it's cooled down. This is really nerve-wracking because I need this to be exactly where it is. And once we heat it and the solder flows, it can move a little bit. So at least we'll have this stop flow liquid down to stop the solder from moving too much where we don't want it to go. So that's good. But it's always nerve-wracking doing this because I want to get it right the very first time. And I don't need to cover the piece in the no flow. Just around the bezel is good enough. And if you're just joining, that's going to be the final piece. It's my Free Bird pendant. So we're going to solder the bezel on right now and the logos on the back. Okay, I'm going to get my torch on and I'm going to heat it now. I'm using my steel tweezers in case we need to adjust it. And this is acetylene gas. Acetylene and oxygen. Just gonna heat it a little bit to dry out that no flow, the stop flow. Dry it out a little bit. And I'm going to position myself a little better here. All right, we're just going to turn the torch up high. I'm just going to go for it now. Okay, looks like it's soldered well, so I'm going to throw it right into the pickle pot. And then we'll assess it when it comes out again. So that noise was me putting it into the acid solution. Now we're going to do another one. We're doing 2 today. This is our second bezel, and we're going to sweat solder the back using easy solder. This is wire solder. I just like it for the ease of cutting a lot of it at once versus the sheet solder. Gonna get a good amount on here. We've already used hard solder and medium solder to make the bezel, and now we're gonna do easy to attach the bezel to the piece, and then we're gonna do extra easy to do the logos on the back. You wanna take it from hard down to medium or easy, however far you need to go, however many pieces you have to attach. I'm gonna grab a drink of water, you guys. It's really nerve-wracking. I haven't soldered in a few months, so be right back. I drank a lot of coffee today too, so I just need to drink a lot of water. Sorry about that. I can show you guys my new sticker though. So, check it out. This bird was made into a sticker. It says Goji Jewelry. So when you order from me, you'll get one of those. That was my old logo, Gem of Garbage Island, and then my new logo is this one here, the pink one, Goji Jewelry. Okay. Drank a lot of coffee, so I'm like a little shaky, which is terrible for soldering. I don't recommend it, but I was really tired today. Okay, I'm gonna put my respirator back on, so it's gonna be harder to hear me. 1 second. Okay, now we're gonna sweat solder, which means we're doing a whole flat surface covered in solder. This is the easy solder. Not that it's easy to use, it's just you have hard, medium, easy, and extra easy are the types. See that? See how it flowed? That's what we're looking for. Now I'm gonna put my flux onto the bird. Just right where we want it. And then we'll place the bezel. Okay, now I'm gonna get it into place. Trying to get it perfectly lined up. We got one shot at this. I'm taking my time because it's got to be perfect. It's hard to tell if it's perfectly aligned. I think so. I think it looks pretty good. Okay. We're gonna go for it. Gonna shake up our stop flow. I call it no flow from Rio Grande. That's gonna stop the solder from flowing into the grooves of the bird. This pretty blue color. And I'm just gonna paint it on around the bezel. You guys can ask questions too. I don't know if you can hear me well over all the noise, but I can see the screen, so feel free to ask questions. Okay, I'm just gonna add a little bit more because some of it burns off when I heat it. Some people use whiteout for this, but I would never recommend that because it's really toxic. This is much less toxic, but you still want really good ventilation. Wear a respirator. Never breathe any of this stuff in, okay? I'm saving up for a big fume extractor. Okay, looks pretty good. If you're just joining, we're making a free bird pendant and we're soldering the bezel on right now, and then we're gonna solder the logos onto the back. And it's loud because I have lots of fans running because of all the fumes. They're really toxic. So now we're gonna go ahead and use my silver smithing torch, and we're gonna heat it up all around to set the bezel. And I gotta keep it a real close eye on it that it doesn't move. This is exactly where we want it. So we got one shot at this to solder it in place. I'm a little nervous, I always am. Always a little nervous because the stakes are high with soldering. All right, so we're gonna first just burn off some of that extra no flow. Just warm it up, heat it up a bit. Making sure all the fumes go into my fume extractor and not into the room. All right, now I'm gonna turn things up a notch and solder it down. All right, let's hope that came out good. It's hard to tell right now. Let's go ahead and take our other piece out first. And then we'll put this into the pickle pot, into the acid. That's what that sound was. You can't see, but I took out the other piece from the acid, and then I put it into baking soda and water. I'm gonna grab a rag, hold on. So now we're checking this piece to see if it's soldered correctly, if it went down on all sides, and if it's centered. Okay, it's soldered on nicely, but turn this off for a second. So it's soldered nicely. I just want to check it with the stone in place because I want to get it perfectly centered, and it can be hard to tell if it is until the stone's there. So be right back. Okay, so I'm going to put a piece of floss down. And then I'm not sure what stone it is. It's either this one or the other one. Looks like it's this one. Yeah. Alright, look with me. Does it look like it'll be centered enough? I think it's good. I'm looking for a space that's less than a millimeter. Like, I feel like I could move it a smudge to the left, but I think the stone is actually perfectly centered. It's just really hard to tell sometimes until you set the stone, until the bezel walls go down over the top. I almost want to move the bottom to the left just a little bit. The top looks good. Nothing's worse than finishing your piece, setting the stone, and then seeing that it's like off a little bit. So I always take my time to really analyze before we finalize it. Okay, I think it's good. Because if I do have to move it, we do risk kind of messing it up a little bit. So that's why you want to get it right on the first go. So we're going to go ahead and do the logos now, while the other piece is in the pickle pot. So it's going to be a little wobbly because of the bezel under there. So I'm just going to put some quarters underneath to help stabilize it. The quarters you can heat with no problem, so I like to have a bunch of quarters around just to use them as props. So that's just going to help us keep the piece stabilized. And for the back, we're going to do this peace sign and my logo, Goji, G-O-G-I. And for this, we're going to do extra easy solder, because we already did easy solder for the bezel. Is the bird casted? Yeah, so I carved the bird into wax and then got the whole thing cast into metal. Then we fabricated the bezel, and then these are my stamps. So I actually do get my logo cast just because I use so many of them. It really speeds up the process. And then the peace sign I don't use as much, and so I just stamped this with my metal stamp in the same gauge metal as the bottom one. And that's what we're doing. But yeah, this is a huge, solid piece of sterling silver. And I also cast them in bronze. And with the turquoise, they're $285, and without turquoise, they're $225. So I'm just going to get my solder So to mark extra easy on my wire, I always do 3 mountains on it. That way when I have a piece like this, like I know what type of solder it is. And we're gonna paint the logos here with some flex. And we're gonna sweat solder, so that means that I'm laying down, we are just gonna lay down the solder and spread it around on the flat surface. It's called sweat soldering. Yeah, casting is awesome. I did it in school and I've done it with a professional, but not all on my own. I don't have the equipment, so I send it out to someone who does it for me. I'm just drying the flex a little bit. That way my solder isn't gonna jump all over the place when I put it down and heat it. So we're using wire solder for this. Doesn't matter what you use. If you want to use sheet solder and cut it, I just sometimes like the ease of the wire solder. That should be a good amount. So we're just going to melt that solder. Oops, I shouldn't have touched it just yet. Okay, get it smoothed out, looks good. Okay, so that's extra easy solder, which means it's going to flow really quickly. Okay, now we're going to put flex onto the bird right where we want these pieces to go. I just touched where it was hot, not smart. So this part's hard because they will move around a bit. Looks like the back is higher. Okay, the back is higher, and I don't want that because then this piece, when it heats up, it's gonna flow towards the top. So let me see if I can adjust that. Let me see. I'm actually gonna put a couple here. That'll be better. You want to set yourself up for success, you know? Yeah, they'll move a little bit, but that's okay. I just have to be quick, and what we're going to do is we're going to heat it up a little bit to dry out the flex first. That'll help hold it in place. You can see it bubbling, so that'll move the piece. So we're just drying that out first. Okay. Just waiting till there's no bubbles and the flux gets glassy. Sorry, I'm hitting the camera. All right, we're gonna go for it. You'll see the solder. When it flows, you'll see it form a line right around the edge of the logo. Like that. Okay. Now the top. And you see that edge now that's all around it? Not sure if you can see, but there's like a little edge you can see around the logo. That means that the solder flowed. And we'll make sure the back didn't move at all. Looks good. And now we're going to throw it in the pickle. And now I'll grab the other piece out. Okay, I'm just neutralizing the piece in baking soda and water. And now we're going to check this one out together. You like these tweezers? Yeah, these are ones I like to use. Probably the most, and it's hard to find a pair this big actually. So here's the second piece. If you're just tuning in, this is what it's going to look like when it's done. Turn that fan off. So now I'm just seeing if it's even. I want to make sure it's centered, even on all sides here. It's a solid sterling silver and it turns white. It's really pretty white color. You can see this is out of the pickle and then this is polished. So when you pickle it, it actually pulls the fine silver content to the surface and makes it look white. But you can just scratch it right off so it doesn't stay like that. I'm going to pop the turquoise in to see how it looks. This one. So on this one, I can see that it's actually not totally centered on the top. The top is going a little bit to the right, so I'm going to want to fix that. It's going to bother me. So that's what I don't want to happen, but it's, it's inevitable that it'll move a little bit. So we're going to put the no flow back on and we're going to attempt to move that over just the tiniest bit. Gonna put the no flow on so it doesn't flow, so the solder doesn't flow into the grooves. I'm not gonna put it around the top because that's where I need to move it a little bit. If we can, hopefully we can. If we can't, it means we have to take the whole thing off and start over. But what I'm hoping is that we can get it hot enough that we can just tap it with the tweezers and get it moved over. But I don't want it to flow on the sides or on the bottom, so I'm putting this no flow, I call it, this liquid that stops the solder from flowing. Some of it burns off, so just putting a nice thick layer there. You don't want to breathe any of this stuff in. Just gonna blow my nose real quick. Okay. Just taking a sip of water. Gets really hot under the respirator sometimes. Okay, so we're not gonna add any flux. We are just gonna, because it's a sweat soldered piece, so we're just trying to heat it and then nudge it over the tiniest bit to the right so it's center. Hi, welcome. Welcome, welcome. Doing the soldering today. All right, I'm gonna put the fan back on. The green stuff is Rio stop flow so that the solder doesn't flow in those areas. And this is linked in my bio under the supplies list. Just gonna burn off the extra. See how it bubbles? Just gonna let that burn and dry out first. It'll start to turn gray. Okay, now I'm gonna go in. Okay, I'm not sure if I got it. I think we got it, you guys. holding my breath the whole time. We're gonna pop it in the pickle. Let that stay in there for a minute. I'm gonna look at the questions here. Do I make my own stone case or holder? Not sure what you call them. I think you mean the bezel, like what the stone is sitting in. And yeah, we did that yesterday and the day before in my lives. So it's called the bezel, and you could call it the bezel cup too when you have. So I did this bezel with a back plate on it. I wasn't going to just solder a bezel directly to the piece. It's a lot easier to put a back plate on and then sweat solder it. Just in case, like right now, how I had to adjust it and move it. If we only had a bezel on there, it probably wouldn't hold its shape. All right, so let's see if that's ready. We'll take it out. Okay, got it. Sorry you can't see what I'm doing. Just clean it up a bit. So I was heating it for a while because I was moving it such a small amount that definitely gave it more heat than I wanted to, because you can risk getting fire scale. I think it looks good now. I'll try the stone again. Yeah, perfect, we got it. I'm sure you guys can't even see the difference because it's so small, but it's important to get it right. Okay, now we're going to do the logos on the back. Just going to put some quarters under here to stabilize it. Quarters are great to have at your soldering table. I think that'll be good. So fire scale is just when you solder, it gets fire scale, and usually the pickle will take it all off. But you can get a deeper stain. It's called fire stain, and that's a pain to get off, and that happens when you overheat the piece. So that's what I meant to say, is a fire stain. Glad you guys can hear me though. Now we're doing the logos. Adding the flex. Gonna dry it out. Gonna use my extra easy. Now we're going to heat it and spread it. Okay. Then we're just going to put our flecks where we need to on the bird. I'm going to position it. That's good, and we're just going to heat it a little bit. Alright, there's no bubbling, so I'm going to go for it and get them soldered down. A little bubbling. Okay, the bottom one went. And the top one. All right. I'm going to put that in to the pickle. We're going to take the other one out. Taking it out from the acid and into the baking soda and water. Sorry, I'm always shaking the camera. So when you first heat up your flecks, it's gonna bubble, and those bubbles are gonna move your piece. So I always try to get the piece on and heat it so that the bubbles like go away, and then it gets hardened and it'll kind of like cement your piece into place, and then it's just easier to solder from there. You don't want to like put the logo down and then just heat it without adjusting it, because those bubbles are gonna move it all over the place, if that makes sense. All right, so this looks good, so it's ready for finishing. Let's see, maybe I actually need to eat something, so maybe I'll sign off for a little bit and then come back on after I get a little snack. You guys don't have to wait for me to do that.
Do you guys have any last questions before I jump off? Or anything you want to see more of? I'll probably come back in a bit. I just forgot to eat before I started this. Probably gonna do some more soldering first, and then start the finishing process for the necklaces. Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for joining. And yeah, if you want to keep watching, just follow me so you see when I'm live again. But I'll probably be back in a bit. Thanks for joining, you guys. See you in a bit.